Καλησπέρα σας και σας καλωσορίζουμε στο απογευματινό session του συνεδρίου μας. Αυτή την ώρα έχουμε ένα ειδικό session. Ήταν μόνο αυτή η εισαγωγή στα ελληνικά, από εδώ και πέρα θα συνεχίσω να μιλάω στα αγγλικά. The title of the session is Participation in Environmental and Energy Policy Issues, Critical Insights. As I was one of the persons that decided to set up this panel, the question we're trying to pose to this panel, and therefore our speakers are going to somehow, one way or another, answer, is how, if and how, participation and ecological or environmental issues are connected. And this question is posed, of course, to the speakers, but also taking into account the current ecological crisis and the current climate crisis, which I and I suppose other researchers and activists put as part of the ecological crisis. We have with us speakers both from Greece and Turkey, and that have research experience and participation in either social movements or environmental movements or research regarding them, and they are trying to set their thoughts on this issue. So I jump directly to our speakers, and we start with Kostas Vourekas, who is next to me, and he's going to talk about, the title of his presentation is Climate Crisis and Energy Transition, a critical approach of the international context and the Greek case.
Good afternoon. I would like to present you something that I would say it is more a work in progress. And this would be a short introduction to something like a research about the definition of a critical approach to climate crisis and energy transition, in particular with the Greek case, but also maybe in a global framework. Climate change as a dimension of a multidimensional, in fact, ecological crisis is already present, and the world is moving one way or another towards an energy transition. This energy transition is not exactly, I would say, from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources, but rather from coal and oil to what is more or less politically defined as green energy. In this presentation, I will try to make a short introduction to a critical approach, mainly to the narratives of climate change and energy transition in general, and to the Greek case in particular. I begin with a certain reference. In fact, two papers of Eric Svigendau, Apocalypse Now and Apocalypse Forever, which is about the consensual presentation and mainstreaming of the global problem of climate change that leads to a post-political and post-democratic condition. The dominant narrative about climate change is based on apocalyptic imaginaries Climate change is presented as an overwhelming catastrophe that will come in the near future if nothing is done, but the technomanagerial elite knows what has to be done to fix the problem. Everything has to change in order to change nothing in the current political system. So let's take an example. It's like if your house gets fire, this is not exactly the time to reflect on how fire services work, if the system of fire services is adequate to address the problems. It's not this time. If your house gets fire, it is the time to call immediately the fire department. If climate change is an Armageddon that is coming, capitalist system is in fact beyond dispute, and then the only thing that can be done is to use the means of the current system to fix the problem immediately, as the example with the fire department. The people, in this case, cannot choose between one political direction or another, because the people in this narrative are not constituted as heterogeneous political subjects, but rather as universal victims suffering from processes beyond their control. But in fact, with a contradiction to this narrative, climate change is not exactly a pending catastrophe. Climate change is already here, and the big question is who pays the price of the consequences of climate change, who takes the benefits and who pays the costs of energy transition, etc. Questions that are very political in their nature and not meta-democratic or meta-political. An example of Eric's Vigendau has to do with the Titanic. You know the movie and the ship, etc. If the planet is the Titanic and climate change is the iceberg, we are not exactly in a case where the planet, the Titanic, approaches the iceberg and we have to turn the ship immediately. We have rather crashed into the iceberg, and what is at stake is that the passengers of the first seat are trying to catch the lifeboats. That was his example. Now, I would like to say some things about the Greek case. The Greek energy mix was traditionally based on brown coal, as we all know, at least in Greece. Brown coal power plants are a very polluting industry, and I would like to show you some diagrams about that. In this image, we see that in terms of carbon dioxide, 9 out of 10 most polluting industries in European Union are brown coal power plants in Germany and Poland, maybe. This comes from European Environment Agency. If we see this diagram, we see that in terms of particulate matter, although Greece is not an industrial country and does not have a heavy industrial base, has reached the top 10 of the most polluting industries, with the coal plant Kardia in number 7. Now this power plant has been closed. The Greek government announced a program to phase out brown coal power plants, in fact, 10 years earlier than the corresponding German program. The social consequences of, in the peripheries, in the Greek peripheries that are economically dependent from brown coal activities will be devastating, in my opinion. Brown coal, nowadays in Greece, is not substituted only or mainly by renewables, but mainly from natural gas, which is in fact a fossil fuel, which was named politically bridge fuel in order to be presented as a kind of green energy, or at least something that leads to green energy. But methane leaks from natural gas also contribute to climate change. And if they are more than 3.2%, the environmental benefit of this substitution is in serious doubt. Current scientific estimations vary between 1.5 and 7.9. And this is because it is not very easy to detect methane, as it is a gas that is invisible, you cannot smell it, etc. This variation is large enough and puts in doubt the substitution of brown coal with natural gas. Also, the current sharp rise in the global prices of natural gas give rise to energy poverty in Greece and in the world in general. In Greece, despite the fact that some of the biggest investments nowadays are on the energy sector, energy poverty of the population is one of the greatest in the European Union, and it is constantly on the rise. In this image, we can see the percentage of people who cannot afford to keep their home adequately warm, and we see that Greece, along with Portugal, Turkey, Macedonia, Bulgaria, Latvia, etc., are the worst case in the European Union. Big Greek construction companies, which are one of the biggest Greek industries, are heavily investing on renewable energy, and especially on wind parks. The siting of wind park developments is regulated by spatial planning. This map is the current spatial planning for the siting of wind park developments. We can see that it divides the Greek space, in fact, into two zones. The red zones are called zones of priority, and the yellow zones are called zones of, let's say, appropriateness. So we see that there is no any definition of non-investment zone for wind parks, and the whole national space is divided to appropriate and urgent areas to develop wind energy parks. At the top of the map, we see that an ecologically very sensitive area, the estuary of Evros River, is also a zone of priority for these developments. And other areas that are ecologically sensitive and mainly very important for the birds, not even inside Natura 2000 network or in the main migratory routes of birds, no investment zones of wind parks are included in current spatial planning. Wind parks located in environmentally very sensitive areas, as in the Greek case, have a very negative impact on biodiversity, mainly because of the fragmentation of habitats and other important impacts. Once again, the dominant narrative about climate change is at play. Multidimensional ecological crisis is oftenly reduced to the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere. To take some measures against this is called an emergency that somehow bypasses other aspects of the ecological crisis, as the biodiversity. This narrative was used in the Greek case to promote a so-called green energy transition, a transition that is nowadays against biodiversity, and also the deregulation of the environmental legal framework in Greece is also promoted in order to achieve green energy investments. In the global scale, energy sprawl is already a large driver of land use change. Renewable energy sources lack the land use efficiency of more intensive energy sources. If we look at this diagram, we see that especially wind and biomass are very consuming, have a large landscape level impact. Having in mind the predicted rise of energy consumption, energy sprawl, defined as new land required for energy production, is projected to have bigger impact for future land use change and consequently a bigger impact on biodiversity than the agriculture industry and the urbanization processes combined. Therefore, the current ecological crisis, I would say that it is unsolvable without a sharp decrease in energy consumption. Otherwise, the transition to green energy and the protection of biodiversity are in contradiction with each other. Energy efficiency itself does not solve the problem. It is well established, I think, in the ecological literature. We have the rebound effect at the level of the private consumer and the so-called Jevons paradox, which occurs when technological progress or government policy increases the efficiency with which a resource is used, reducing the amount necessary for any one use, but the rate of consumption of that resource rises due to the increasing demand that is caused exactly by this efficiency. So maybe the problem is much bigger than we think. We can also see this very characteristic image, in my opinion. We see the exponential growth of global energy consumption since the Industrial Revolution. At the upper side of the image, we see a very small decrease in the whole picture that corresponds to 2009 economic crisis. So maybe the problem is not so easy to solve. Maybe it is rather, I would say that it is not only just the capitalist system, but maybe the industrial civilization as a whole. To begin with, I think we should make ecological crisis and the energy question a political issue again, and not just a managerial problem that can be solved taking certain measures that are defined by experts, managers, etc. Thank you very much.
Thanks to Kostas Vourekas. Thank you, Kostas. We keep any question or comment for after finishing all the presentations. We go on to Turkey, to Özge and Defne Gönenç. They will say their right names. And the title of the presentation is Democratizing Environmental Governance? ? A relationship-based evaluation of environmental civil society's democratizing potential. And I see we have with us Defne. Here she is, I can see her. The floor is yours, Defne.
Ναι, καλημέρα σας. Είμαι Defne στην Ζημιρνή. Μιλάω λίγο ελληνικά, so I have to continue in Turkish. But hello, everybody, again. I would like to share my screen. So I'm in the process of learning Greek, so it's always a good excuse to practice some, Greek for me. Do you see my screen? Do you see the screen?
Yes, we do. Don't worry.
Okay, great. So, Okay. So hello everybody again. So today I will be talking about a research that we have been conducting with Dr. Özge for around 2 years now. We have been researching about the characteristics, purpose, topics that they, work about, efficiency, and many other, characteristics of environmental civil society in the Aegean region of Turkey. So it's really about the neighboring, zone of Greece. What is the rationale of our study? So as you know, and as we have been discussing for the last 3 days, environmental governance is an area where stakeholder-based democracy experiments are increasing. This is the case particularly since the 1990s, after the end of the Cold War, the so-called triumph of capitalism. And the purpose is to enhance legitimacy and accountability in environmental projects and policymaking through promotion of advancing civil society's potential. So the argument is, if civil society's potential is advanced enough, then legitimacy, accountability will increase, and legitimacy and accountability of environmental projects can increase because participation of environmental civil society is increased. So this is one of the main promises of liberal democratic societies. However, as you know, the current state of relations between the state, non-state, and market actors, and the relations between the non-state actors are questionable. So environmental civil society democratizing, this leaves us with certain limitations and problems. And this is why we actually decided to do this study. And what is the, research question we posed? The research question is, how are the relations between environmental non-state, state, and market actors in the Aegean region of Turkey? What was the aim of this study, So for evaluating the democratizing potential of environmental civil society, we looked at their external relations with each other, as well as with different actors, different public and private actors about environmental governance in the Aegean region in Turkey. So when we looked at literature, we already see some good studies conducted. For instance, Kadir Beyoğlu, Paker, Yılmaz, and Özen conducted some research about environmental NGOs in Turkey. However, most of them are single studies or, a few case study analysis. There is not many, large studies conducted in Turkey until now. And the main focus has been national. There are not studies about regional or like local. Look at large and well-known organizations like, WWF in Turkey, or Greenpeace, for instance, or TEMA, one of the most well-known organizations in Turkey. So there was a gap of research on local and regional NGOs and their relationships with diverse actors. So if I want to briefly talk about, the history of NGOs in Turkey, approximately the green mobilization started in the country in the middle of the 1980s. And we see professionalization and institutionalization of civil society actors in the 1990s. And in the new millennium, we had two changes. Firstly, local environmental movements rose against the deepening effects of neoliberal politics in the country. As you know, neoliberal impacts particularly deepened and widened during the AKP government in, after the following 2000s. But at the same time, some of the NGOs, environmental civil society organizations, depoliticized with more and their dependence on the European Union in terms of project funding increased. Also, their dependence on private sector for their financing increased. So what did we do? We actually collected all the NGOs, and in the Aegean region of the country. And in order to do this, we actually looked at a few databases And for instance, in Derbis, this is an official database, there were 2,602 environmental, natural life, and animal rights association active in Turkey. And 25, like 1/4 of them are in the Asian region. So this region is actually quite active in terms of environmental civil society. And our university is based in this region. So these are the reasons why we actually looked at the Asian region. So as I just said, we collected all the ENGOs in this region, which makes 10 cities. There are actually 8 cities in this geographical region. We also collected ENGOs in Çanakkale and Balıkesir since they are coastal cities. So we ended up with 306 active ENGOs and sent them a questionnaire, and the questionnaire lasted around half an hour actually, and successfully 150 of them answered, so we are very happy about it. So we have a success rate around 50%. We had 35 close-ended, 5 open-ended questions, and we posed them questions about their organizational and financial characteristics, environmental priorities and strategies, relationships with different actors, and perception of environmental success. So today I'm going to present now about their relationships with different actors, because we think that democracy, participatory, like part of the participatory democracy is actually composed of relationships with different actors around you. So if the relations are organized in a way that everybody can participate equally and meaningfully, then we can actually talk about participatory democracy. And if not, then it means that the participatory democracy is problematic. So let's look at our findings. To give you a brief picture, you can see the rise of the ENGOs in the Aegean, particularly after 2000, but particularly after 2008, because 70% of ENGOs was actually established after this period. So they are actually quite young ENGOs. And they are mostly located in the coastal cities, as you can see here, mostly in Izmir, Muğla, and Aydın. When we look at their annual budget, unfortunately, around half of them don't have any budget. So they are actually completely voluntary organizations, and they are quite small. So we are talking about very local, small organizations, voluntary environmentalists in certain circumstances with no budget at all. And like some of them have some budget, but their budget is quite limited. And when we look at their goals, we also see that most of their goals is actually increasing environmental consciousness and perhaps educating creating certain public opinion and educating the public about environment. So the other actions do not remain as their goals. For instance, they don't aim about exposing the individuals and organizations who damage the environment, or not all of them fight against anti-environmental practices, or they don't even aim about changing lifestyle. So these NGOs do not have big goals, and those they have actually substantial goals apart from raising consciousness. They remain as a small percentage. So voila, these are the main findings. So when we look at their relationships, these are actually self-evaluations. So we asked the ENGOs to evaluate their relationships with other actors, and these are the results. So they see the most positive, they see their relationships with other local and national NGOs as the most positive. And then this is followed by their relations with local governments. And then interestingly enough, they see their relations with other environmental NGOs less positive compared to their relationships with, generalist, non-environmentalist, non-governmental organizations. Then half of them actually favor their relations with state actors. and less than half of them see their relations with private actors positive. And as you can see here, the relations with international NGOs and international organizations are very limited. So we cannot actually talk about local environmental civil society as a globally impacting and globally democratizing force in the case of Aegean region, unfortunately. And when we look at the open-ended questions, we see their relations with, what we see is their relations with local administrations are varying. Sometimes they are good, sometimes they are bad. Some of the environmental organizations are involved in city councils and other local committees, but some of them are not. And unfortunately, most of them, the majority evaluates their relation with the local administrations to be negative. They say that they listen to us, in other words, municipalities listen to NGOs, but they don't implement the suggestions coming from the civil society. And I think this is a very important sentence, because this means that we have participation, but this is not meaningful participation. So they can talk, but whatever they say will not be listened. And with private sector, yes, there is some collaboration. Some of the NGOs would like to cooperate. They use it whenever there is an opportunity to collaborate. But around 40%, they have no contact at all. Some of them are quite cautious and they build selective ties. And with government agencies, they claim that the government doesn't take criticisms in Turkey and the suggestions of environmental civil society seriously. Around 20% of the NGOs didn't have any contact, and around 16% claimed that at least one of their activities was stopped by the government authorities. When we look at the relationships within the environmental civil society in the region, we see that they have solidarity when necessary, and they mainly exchange knowledge and experience. However, although they show a basic level of solidarity with each other, unfortunately, they don't get into action so frequently with each other. For instance, they rarely file a lawsuit together. They do formal proposals and petitions, again, quite rarely. They rarely collaborate for research activities, and they rarely run mutual campaigns. And we ask about, so what is the obstacle that is preventing you from collaborating together? And poor communication and weakness of the solidarity culture in Turkey comes up as the main reason. But we also see negative attitudes and egos, big egos of, unfortunately, the directors of the environmental civil society. Also, some of them pursue different strategies and have different principles. But of course, some of them also would like to act independently. So there are also several obstacles, remain obstacles to collaborations. So let's have a look at the actions the NGOs do with other actors. As you can see, the orange one is we asked what type of different actions they implement with other actors, like local governments, state agencies, international institutions, private sector, universities. And as the orange one shows, in most of the case, they don't do any of these activities. And what activities we talk here? Organizational activities, meetings, mutual projects, consulting, provision of expertise. And only in the local government, with only local governments, they do engage some activities, and they are mostly, conference organization or organization of meetings. So they generally do activities in terms of raising consciousness, or doing certain educational activities. They don't do most other activities as we described. So what types of conclusions we can withdraw from here? So as you know, in order to fully and meaningfully participate in environmental decision-making, management and policy implementation, and of course, more broadly in democratic processes, environmental civil society must have the right resources to sustain their activities, and they should possess sufficient knowledge. However, in our region, in the Aegean region, although it's one of the most active region in terms of having, environmental civil society, they are quite small and they don't have financial resources, or if they have, they are quite little or small. So there is a financial gap, but there are also other problems. The environmental civil society have different relation patterns with different actors. Some of them are poor relations and some of the relations are loose in general. Their relations with local actors are stronger compared to their links and ties to national and international actors. So we cannot really talk about a global environmental democratization process because of the local activities in this case, or we can talk about it in a very limited sense. The quality of the relationships are also questionable. The relations occur, but they don't last. This is also a problem because the relations remain short-term, the ties are weak, and long-term collaborations are quite rare. And these are like poor collaborations, and weak ties might be one reason why the e-NGOs in our survey find themselves ineffective in influencing, decision makers and policymakers at the national and international level. And we see, in conclusion, a very limited use of the potential for democratizing, capacity building, and engagement in environmental governance in the case of Aegean region by the environmental civil society actors. So Evaristopoli, thank you very much for having me for this presentation, and I hope you enjoyed listening to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Defne. We will have some time later on to set some questions for you. We go directly to our final presentation that comes from Thessaloniki, if I'm not mistaken. So we have Miltiadis Toskas-Tasios and Elisavet Thoidou, and they will talk us about spatial planning and energy transition, the role of participatory processes in RES planning, in renewable energy sources planning. Ms. Thoidou is with us, I can see her. You have the floor and you can start screen sharing.
Okay, thank you very much. Unfortunately, Miltiadis Toskas is not with us, so I'm going to make the presentation, which is based on his PhD work, PhD research. So it's work on progress. Let me share the screen. Okay. I hope you can see. The title of our presentation is The Role of Participatory Process in Renewable Energy Planning. And as I said before, it's
would you mind putting it on full screen? Would you mind putting it on full screen just to have better view?
Okay, yes.
Or reader view, okay, thank you.
Of course, the first thing we have to say is that the context of contemporary crisis stemming from climate change is decisive for our approach. And as we know, energy use contributes to a very important crisis in the planet, which has made it necessary to consider all aspects and all means for addressing serious problems caused by climate change. The fact is that besides many other factors and processes, it has been acknowledged that the citizens' perception is very important for addressing climate change. In several reports by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, it is recognized that even though citizens' awareness regarding greenhouse gas emissions has been raised, and the positive stance about renewables is evident, the setting, location of various types of renewables causes concerns at both the local, the national, and the global level. And therefore, significant issues are raised regarding the public acceptance of renewable energy establishments. Moreover, there is a very broad discussion about sustainable transition to green energy and fair and socially acceptable transition. It is important for societies to be involved in the decision-making process, feel that their opinion is taken into account, and feel that this process is fair. Sustainable transition, on the other hand, takes into account land users and all ecosystem services in general. And in this process, the role of spatial planning is very important, because spatial planning can operate as a framework that coordinates several activities on the ground. And of course, a framework that provides specific directions and makes provision for the location of specific establishment and networks regarding renewable energy. So there is an effort to promote public acceptance of energy transition and renewables in particular, which of course can be enhanced through public participation. Participation in general may be defined as the process of and the practice of consulting and involving relevant stakeholders. Stakeholders, as we know, are people, organizations, either affected by the process or who can affect the process. So all types of stakeholders are considered in this process of raising awareness and raising public participation in spatial planning for energy transition. Following the above context, it is evident that the success of transition depends to a great degree on public acceptance. It is recognized in many studies, but also it is evident in everyday practice in Greece and elsewhere. So particular subjects, issues that concern social acceptance relate to environmental impacts, to landscape modification, to disappointment about planning process, to impacts on productive activities, to impact on biodiversity, to the expansion of green infrastructure and green and grey infrastructure in general, and also concern trust of public in planners and in planning in general. We have a very broad experience of several cases that local communities do not agree with with certain cases of renewable establishment and of several cases that local communities raise awareness about the impact of such establishments on local environment and local societies. So the question is how this process is going to be included, involved and engaged within the planning process in order to avoid such mismatching and such conflicts that occur after a decision about a specific location, a specific siting has been made. It is, of course, the key subject of this conference, participation and participatory processes. So it is not necessary, of course, to argue about the necessity of public participation, but we can add here that especially in environmental decision making, it is very important for enhancing social acceptance of support of a decision, as well as in terms of gathering local knowledge and promoting social learning. Here I would like to say something which is based on another experience from a seminar in which a very important person from the Greek constitutionary board mentioned the following, that when specialists who have to make decision about the legitimacy of specific siting do not know how to judge about this, they rely to a great extent on public opinion. It is very important that public opinion and public consultation provide the details that experts do not know. So this is not only a theoretical argument, it is also a practical experience, which is very important for all experts. Even for planners, in my personal opinion, it is very important to disseminate the outcome of studies, of planning studies, in order to avoid mistakes and misunderstandings, which it is not possible for the expert to know. So there are many reasons for which participatory planning is very important, not only for raising the acceptance on behalf of the public, but also for enhancing the quality of the plan per se. So, and this is especially something that new planners should take into account. As we know, there is a growing trend towards community-based renewable energy transition, and in many countries, in some countries, I would say, this process is more developed than in other countries. In some countries, residents take on an essential role and become producers, consumers, and owners of renewables, so they do participate in the planning of renewables in a great extent. And here in this figure, you can see such cases. You can see that in Germany and France, there is a high participation of local communities in this process. So from the viewpoint of spatial planning, it is very important that participatory processes are involved, and Of course, this is not only the case for energy transition, but it is also the case for all the issues addressed by spatial planning. I have to say that the beginning of sorry, but I cannot see it, the slide because of my. Okay. The beginning of the participatory processes in spatial planning has its roots in the 70s as an overall request in contracts that contrasted to the then prevailing top-down character of planning. This is the transition of the New England Town Hall meeting in North America, as well as the democracy transition in Sweden. And as we know, it started to gain in the early 80s, and since the 90s, the participatory processes at spatial planning was much more evident. So, as Strategia notes, in contemporary planning, public participation can manage conflicts between science, technology, and society, and also can manage environmental problems. Now, if we turn to renewables and independence from conventional energy sources, which is an urgent need, we can see that the effects of this turn is not all times negative on land, on landscape, and nature. So spatial planning can undertake the role of addressing these effects, can ensure the sustainable use of renewables, as well as can enhance acceptance by including approaches in which the participation of the public and stakeholders can be crucial. Of course, for this, it is very important to know the way the planning system is structured, which means which are the competencies of local, regional, and national level in spatial planning. First of all, we have to say that this awareness about participatory processes in issues that concern the environment derives from the United Nations framework, which has been established several years ago. First of all, as you can see in the figure on the right, civic engagement in public policies is a very important issue in all socioeconomical development issues that concern the UN. And in this figure, we can see all the levels from local to global, and also all the types of stakeholders, how they engage in the decision-making process and how they impact each other. Now, regarding the environment, we know that the Aarhus Convention is the most important convention that is the basis of the dissemination of environmental information, and it is also the basis on which the decision-making process on environmental issues is obliged to take into account the public opinion and to disseminate the information available. So if we go to the website of our Environment on Climate and Energy, we can see there that there is a report on how the Aarhus Convention is implemented in Greece, which of course is, I don't know how we can characterize this report, but the fact that we do have this report is characteristic of the fact that we do have to follow the Aarhus Convention. And I have to say here that in many cases, we are obliged to disseminate this information due to our obligations in supranational organizations such as the UN, as well as the European Union, which we can see here. And as we all know, in the European Union, we have the Strategic Environmental Assessment Directive since 2001, which is the key framework for setting the public consultation process for disseminating the information and enable the public to express its opinion regarding not only environmental issues, but also development issues and spatial planning issues in the context of both spatial plans and the development programs. So in Greece, we have this directive in force since 2006, which has made it necessary to put all plans and programs into public consultation according to specific rules. And if you, for instance, see the recent law on spatial planning, the law of 2020, you can see there that the public consultation for the strategic environmental assessment is combined with the public consultation about the plan per se. So we have this process, and this is very useful and very important for us in Greece, I mean. According to this directive, the draft plan or program and the environmental reports shall be made available to the authorities and the public. The authorities and the public shall be given an early and effective opportunity within appropriate time frames to express their opinion on the draft plan or program and the accompanying environmental report before the adoption of the plan or program or its submission to the legislative procedure. We have we can see many such dissemination processes, and in my experience, this is almost the only way we can have access to many plans and programs which are in progress in Greece in the last decades. Otherwise, several decades ago, it was very difficult to have access in such information because it was considered to be something not available to the public. Of course, another aspect of the European context is the way spatial planning is performed in each country. As we know, spatial planning is not a European level policy, and it depends on each country how its spatial planning system is structured. For instance, we can see that in Sweden, here, there is a very well-structured planning process in which the local level has the most of the competences and is very strong, I mean. So there is a comprehensive plan which enables consultation and environmental assessment and when the municipality prepares or modifies a comprehensive plan, it should consult the country board, regional bodies, neighboring municipalities, citizens of municipality, and also it takes into account the private interests in relation to public interests. The fact is that not only the local level is very well positioned in this system, but also local and public participation processes have a very strong role in spatial planning. Of course, there are critical approaches about the role of, about the relationship between private and public interests and so on. However, this is not the only issue. The fact is that there is planning and planning participation process. So there is also a very strong presence of the environmental and energy transition dimension within spatial planning. For instance, in a comprehensive municipal plan are often identified areas suitable and unsuitable for wind energy. In addition, each municipality has an energy plan which is influenced and influences municipal plan. So we can say that there is an integration between spatial planning and energy transition within this comprehensive local plan. Of course, as I said before, this depends on the way the spatial planning system of each country is structured, because it is not directly affected by the European Union framework. Now, if we, the key assumption, therefore, is that to a great extent, spatial planning enables planning for climate-related policies and energy transition, in particular at the local level, and therefore public participation in spatial planning is a key means for public participation in renewables planning. Of course, local authorities are in a privileged position in terms of involving the wider community in the planning process, and especially in climate-related policies. And there is another assumption also that despite the system that is already established, local authorities have the possibility, have the ability to establish their own processes for enhancing local participation. Now, we can proceed to the case of Greece, which has a very hierarchical spatial planning system, as you can see in this figure. Greece, together with some other countries, such as Spain, is among those with a very centralized spatial planning system, which means that the concentration of spatial planning competences to the central level, I mean the ministry, can lead local communities away from planning and decision-making participation. There is a study, the Big Green Research Group, which finds a lack of consultation and participation of local communities in both the process of drafting the spatial planning frameworks and the procedures of providing for enable the establishment of renewable energy projects in various locations in the country. So if we go to the spatial planning system of Greece, we know that we have two levels: the strategic level, which includes the national level special spatial planning frameworks, for instance, for renewable energy, and at the same time, the regional spatial planning frameworks for the 13 regions of the country. The fact is that in both these planning frameworks, the competence for approval is in the Ministry of the Environment and Energy, while there are processes of public consultation within the context of the SEA directive, and also for the regional spatial planning frameworks, some consultation is provided in the context of the chapter devoted to landscape. At the same time, there is the other part, the other branch of the spatial planning system, which is the regulatory planning. I mean, the general town plan and the special plans, special urban plans, which concern the level of the municipalities and neighbors.
Please try to conclude because.
Okay, now I'm concluding. Thank you very much.
Yes.
I have, I think, two more slides.
Thank you.
So, as I said before, special and regional frameworks and local plans are submitted to strategic environmental assessment. And there is another process, which is the urban governance platform, which, however, refers to laws mostly, not to lower level of planning documents. It is, of course, useful, but it is not. It should be expanded to all types of plans and processes. As I said before, also the Landscape Convention poses some rules, and at the same time, there is it needs municipality in the context of the Kallikratis program, the public consultation committee, the municipality consultation committee, which can offer the floor for consultation at the municipal level. And of course, there are several types of consultation which are not provided by the spatial planning system, which can be settled, set in particular cases, but are not provided by law. To conclude, now we can say that the national level has almost all competences for setting criteria and constraints for allocation of renewable energy projects. And these competences may not reinforce participatory approaches. Concentration of spatial planning competences poses limitation on participation for renewable energy planning. There is a need for participatory approaches in the planning process and policy making. There is a need for structured consultation processes and further strengthening OpenGov platform and similar ICT tools. Also, for strengthening incentives for community energy development and utilization of good practices, for instance, local referendums, vetoes, etc., and at the same time, face-to-face procedures at the local level. It is not only the ICTs that can be utilized, but also face-to-face procedures have to be enforced in order to further promote public participation in planning. Thank you very much, and sorry for the time.
Thank you. We are really out of time, so we have to somehow run a bit things because I do have some questions from the Zoom platform, and I will set it to the presenters. Is there something from here, from the audience, that you want to comment or ask? Okay, shall I move on to the questions from the Zoom platform? Okay, I would suggest to go with Defne first, because then there are a couple of questions for Kostas and Ms. Thoidou. So Defne, I will put the question very quickly. The question has two aspects. The first one is you give a concept, a definition of ENGO that is quite wide. I mean, it could be a very small environmental group up to a nationwide environmental organization. So I was wondering first if there is a need, even in your research, to make this differentiation. I mean, to set very different ways of conceptualizing the different ENGOs. And the second part of the question is, it's total information. It has to do with if these ENGOs, the only thing you didn't tell us about of this very interesting research is what are their connections and relations with political parties. I would be very interested to know if they have direct or not direct relations with political parties. But in order to save some time, I will put all the questions also to Kostas and Ms. Thoidou, and then we go first Defne, then Kostas, and finally Ms. Thoidou. Is it okay? Okay. Then to Kostas, we have two questions. The first one is, are there any coal subsidies in Greece? And do you know how big is it in comparison to other countries? This is the first question. And the second question is, do you think that giving consumer subsidy or special credit, if for instance they want to put solar power onto the top of their houses, can be a good solution? Consumers, but not only producers focused grant credit. I would put these two questions to you, and then there is one question for both Kostas Vourekas and Ms. Thoidou that has to do how, if any, did Troika policies impact environmental planning in the 2010s in Greece? Big question. So I give first the floor to Defne, then to Kostas, then to Elisavet Thoidou, and sorry for the time that presses us. So it's going to be also your final, your concluding remark. Okay. So first we go with Defne, and then we continue. Defne, you have the floor. Is there a problem with your internet connection?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, yes, answer the question. The second question is a really good question. And actually, we wanted to ask them about political party connections, but there was a small, probably a mistake in the survey. So it was actually good at the end because we decided to conduct another study and asking the environmental organizations about their relations with political parties and how they conceptualize environment and politics relations. And this survey is currently being answered by the environmental organizations right now. So I hope to present it perhaps next year. Secondly, yes, of course, such a distinction can be done. We on purposely actually collected all environmentalist organizations in this database. So we have both environmental movement type organizations, small local organizations, as well as institutionalized, professionalized organizations. Of course, if we make such a distinction, I mean, I need to look at the information, the data more carefully to answer the question how their relations would differ. But out of my consciousness, out of the general information I have, I assume to have local and small organizations or movement type, gatherings to have less contact with, state level agencies, and of course Greenpeace or the WWF type larger institutionalized organizations, more contacts and relations with both private sector and state level organizations. But probably if you look at local level relations, the distinctions might be a bit more blurred. So I need to look at the data more carefully to answer this question, but I assume to have differences. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Kostas, you have the floor. Please try to keep it to 3 minutes you and 3 minutes Ms. Thoidou. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. About the question with coal subsidies, I would like to say that I think there are not any subsidies nowadays for coal in Greece. Definitely, this is not the issue with the brown coal question in Greece nowadays. The big issue is that these coal plants are phased out in a rather short time. After 10 years, I think all of them will be closed. Some of them are old factories, very polluting, not only in terms of CO2, but also in terms of other substances that have direct negative impact in human health. But there will be the closing of other newer factories also, including one which is supposed to be a state-of-the-art brown coal factory and is nowadays under construction. There is a discussion that it will be transformed to burn waste or biomass or natural gas as a fuel. In general, brown coal was very cheap in Greece because of its easy extraction, but at the same time of very low quality. About the question about the solar power in buildings, in my opinion, it is a very good idea in terms of sustainability. Mainly, my point is that solar power in buildings is installed in buildings. So it is installed in urban spaces that are already not natural. So it is very good for the land use issue. It is a form of sustainable energy that doesn't change the land use of natural areas and other things like that. Finally, about the third question, about the Troika and the environmental planning, I would like to say this. I'm not sure if I understand well, but I will answer what I understand. The environmental legal framework in Greece was not changed by the Troika because it comes from mainly from directives of European Union. It is a European framework. Recent deregulation of certain aspects of the environmental legal framework is a Greek initiative and not one of Troika. On the other hand, Troika had a very heavy impact on the urban and spatial planning, where in fact rewrote the legal framework from the beginning, and this system became in fact a dual system nowadays, where there is one way to urban and spatial planning for local people, let's say, and another separate system privileged for big investments. That was the central idea of Troika's intervention in urban and spatial planning. Thank you.
We thank you. Very quickly, the floor to Mrs. Thoidou for just 2 minutes, if possible.
It will not take long. Thank you. I was laughing before because of the answer that I agree with. I find it very good about the fact that the European level directives do not provide direction for this kind of changes in environmental regulations in Greece. This is a Greek initiative, let's say, and I found it very successful. It's the way Mr. Vourekas put it. But now I'm not expert in environmental planning, so I would like to say some things about spatial planning, for which, of course, I'm not well prepared to provide details, but I can say that the fact is that Troika policies highlighted the role of spatial planning. Okay, spatial planning is much neglected in Greece. We can see this in the way the so-called memorandums refer to the need for enhancing spatial planning and revise spatial planning law. Furthermore, the way this has been applied in the Greek case has to be analyzed and in order to have some safe conclusions. I mean that we witnessed two different phases of this transformation. So I would like to stay in this, I mean, until 2019, and we have change in planning, in spatial planning law, and so on. So I would like to say that the fact is that the importance of spatial planning has been recognized, and we can further elaborate on this. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks to the presenters. Thank you all for being here, and thanks to the people from the Zoom platform. And we continue right away with the next session, which is also the concluding session of the conference. Thank you all. We continue in a bit.